Bon, first of all, Valery, thank you for accepting this interview.
Thanks for invitation.
And we have a lot of things to speak about with what's happened this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, I want to start about what do you think? What can be the result of the protest this weekend in Russia? What can be the result on the power in the Kremlin? Do you think that this video of Navalny can hurt for a long time Putin image?
Certainly, this video influenced dramatically on Putin's image. We understand that perfectly, because many Russians are disappointed in the image of their national leader. Of course, there were some serious reasons for disappointment even earlier during the last couple of years after this pension reform. I mean, the year of 2018. But now, look, they think that our president is a kind of theft. Yeah, you see, because he lives in this, or he wants to live in all these palaces, glorious palaces, at the same time as people suffer. You know, because the level of life in Russia is the level of life is very low and declining. So of course it influences on the image of our president, but at the same time, this is not even a moral psychological shift. It's more important shift, because we see now, we can watch that people's behavior is changing. It's more important because more than 2,000 people participated in the protest last Saturday. Yes, last Saturday. And it's a little bit unprecedented for Russia for the last, I think, 10 or even 15 years. We haven't seen such protests maybe from the 2012. But now geography was more broad. It was incredibly wider. And not only big cities with their more or less pro-liberal and pro-Western middle class participated in the protests, but medium-sized and small towns participated. And this is a very important shift. But I think that now we can observe only just the beginning of the process. It is a very important step, but it is not a decisive one. And I think we need to go some time to achieve, I mean, Russian society to achieve its goals, and it will take, I think, months, not years, but months at least. Yeah, Olivier?
Yeah, but okay. I saw that, for example, because I know I traveled in Russia and I was in Omsk in Siberia, and I saw even Omsk.
I see.
Some protests. Then I was very surprised. But for you, do you think that 2021 is the key year for change in Russia?
I think so. I'm even sure that this year has a good chance to become a turning point in our post-Soviet history. Of course. And now we have a chance. I mean, the Russian society has a chance to open a new prospect, for itself. Because I think we'll face very soon with a very serious and large-scale political crisis in the country. And I think that in the nearest future we can observe a kind of clash between the Russian elites. And so it, of course, opens some space for the people in broad sense, you see. And I think that until the end of this year, we have a chance to observe a resignment of President Putin. but not because of political protests, because of different kind of reason. But nevertheless, this reason is even more serious for him, because look, he is very sick.
I know. I know
Yeah.
I know this. You said that.
My point of view.
But yes. But which scenarios you expect in Russia in 2021? That means you expect only can say little change. That means Putin is sick and maybe we'll put the new prime minister, maybe we'll put again Medvedev, or we will have a big change and new power will happen. What is your scenario?
Yeah, I see. This is the key question, actually. What kind of changes can we expect now? It depends. It depends on the people in general. It depends on the Russian political opposition and its ability and its strength to participate in the crisis. Because the idea of the elites, and now they have a consensus, a kind of consensus, to resume or to preserve Putin's system without Putin. So they need some changes in political design, new prime minister, new image of the authorities, and so on, but not to change the basics of the system in general. And only the participation, very active participation of the society can help us to achieve more dramatic and more large-scale goals, to change the system, or better to say, to overthrow the system and to start to create a foundation of the new system, and I call it a new Russian Republic, better to say, like it was in France. You remember, new Russian Republic. We can say it, the start of the third Russian Republic. Referring the first one was in the year of 1917, from February till October. Then we had the second from 1991 to the last year, and now we have a chance to create a new republic in Russia, the third one.
I agree with your point of view, and do you think do you think that the Russian diaspora, that means all those Russians who are against Putin and are abroad, can push a change in Russia?
I hope, but I don't want to overestimate the abilities. They can put some psychological pressure, for example, on the governments of the countries where they live, with the aim to put a pressure on Putin's regime. But frankly speaking, I know that Putin himself neglects any pressure from outside. He's interested in only in 2 points of view, not the European Union, but China and the United States, and nothing else, you see. You know that European Union and, frankly speaking, even the new American administration are not interested just now into strong pressure on the Russian government, better to say on the Kremlin. So the chances are very, very limited, but it's very important for the Russians, especially for Russian political opposition in the country, to have some sense of moral solidarity, moral and psychological solidarity with those who live abroad, who live outside Russia, the first point. Then those who live outside Russia, they can provide some material, not financial, but maybe some support in infrastructure, in influence using social media and all this stuff, you know. So some potential exists, but I don't want to overestimate it. I think that the most important factor from the point of the Russians who live outside is that after the victory, or better to say after the start of foundation of building of the national republic, they can provide a very substantial help, very substantial assistance. I mean, personal, maybe ideological, some ideas, and so on and so on. It could be very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after victory, in this period. But now it's not so substantial, unfortunately.
Then you said in the Sun that Putin will step down because of some force majeure.
Yeah.
And
right.
You didn't change your prediction since? No?
No. Till the end of this year. Till the end of this year. He has no chances to rule more. This is just a problem of his health, not political limits, you see, and not pressure. But this factor is very important. Maybe it's the key factor for our system, because this Putin system is based on his personality, you know.
Yeah, I know. But the rumor about Putin's severe illness, probably terminal cancer, how well are they grounded?
They grounded on some leaks, and these leaks are very reliable, and more important, that there are leaks from different kind of sources, not only from one.
Okay.
Because it is almost important now to hide his physical condition. It's almost important now. Impossible, excuse me. It's impossible now. He has two main problems. The first one is psychoneurological, and the second is connected with very, very aggressive form of cancer. Right? He has both, and these both problems limit his possibility to perform as a public figure and as a political leader. On physiological level, he can continue to live. It's quite possible, but just live. Look, as a plant in the hospital, but nothing more.
No, like former Chernenko or Andropov at the end.
Oh yeah, or maybe you remember that something more or less close was to French President Mitterrand.
Yeah.
He had a very aggressive form of cancer too, and he had a very strong depression and all this stuff. You remember, I think. Yeah.
And if Putin stepped down, who from the Russian elite would like to be the successor? You think about maybe Sobyanin, about Dumin from Tula? What do you think?
There is no clear and explicit answer you get, I hope. There are rumors, there are discussions, and there is no any decision from Putin's side. But now he thinks about Medvedev again. As a new old successor.
The old instruments, the old tools. But okay, but that will maybe be interesting for the liberal opposition, maybe to come and to in this.
I think that in any case it can provoke in the idea that Putin is leaving. It certainly will provoke a strong political crisis, and it opens, so better to say, it inspires Russian opposition to act, to go into the fight.
And for you, what means the word "the transit of power" for Putin and his cronies? What's that mean for you?
Yeah, I see. For his cronies, this is a very, very simple idea. Without Putin, but with his system, to provide all the benefits of their positions and all their money, and in their political positions. So the same system, but without Putin.
But that will be very difficult.
I think it's even impossible. I'm sure that it's impossible. And as far as I know, there were no historical examples. So when the leader of the authoritarian regime is declining, it's almost impossible to provide.
And in this case, can a possible split between the Russian elite provoke confrontation between the Kremlin's towers?
Oh, yeah, right. It's more than possible, because they have different ideas about possible future successes, the first point. And the second point, is more important. This split it is more or less potential now, but not actual one, can become actual only as a result of a pressure from the society. If we see, for example, crowds of people in the center of the Russian capital, and of course, in this case, we have more chances, incredibly more chances to foresee the split between Russian elites.
And when I speak about Russian elite, you have also this, you can have this split also in the army, in the security forces, in the economic elite, in all those elites, kind of elites, you can have this split.
I think that more important the split between the key group, which is not very big. I think it includes about maybe 2 dozens or not more. But all other groups of elite will make their choice after the split. It's, so you see, they wouldn't have other chance than to make a choice, their own choice, or maybe it's more or less typical for Russia. They prefer to stay neutral and to await for a final result of these fights.
This is like the end of Stalin, you know.
End of Stalin, or maybe in the end of the Soviet Empire. More or less. This is typical behavior. Behavior, you know.
They are waiting the death of the Tsar.
Of the Tsar, and then we'll be loyal to a new one.
And of course, they will say that they were against the former one.
Certainly.
Is it possible for the inside or outside of Russia to disrupt the plan of transition of power inside the Putin elite that wants to preserve the statu quo and give the way to other scenario like a democratic transition in Russia? What do you think?
Yes, you have a chance to intervene into the process. I mean the West in general sense. Maybe the role of the United States could become crucial. Sanctions, but not sanctions against the country, although they have some influence. But sanctions about these key figures against Putin, against his financial and material actives abroad the country, against Kovalchuk's brothers, and so on. And Putin, I know, he's afraid of these sanctions, this kind of sanctions, personal sanctions against his inner circle, because he's afraid of coup d'etat, only in this sense, or better to say a plot against him. Because when they are facing with the choice, Putin or their money, they would prefer to choose money. Putin's know them perfectly.
I agree. You know, I agree. I agree. But in this case, you think like Nemtsov. Nemtsov say, please do sanction not against the people but against the elite.
And yes, and Navalny says the same. Yeah, I agree.
And Nemtsov said that also before he was killed. Which scenario is the best for the West to try to disrupt Putin plans for the transition, or only to observe? What do you think? Which scenario is the best for the West?
I have no doubt that the main position of the European Union is to observe. I know it perfectly. They are not going to put the pressure. They are not going to intervene. They will wait the outcome of this political crisis in Russia, and they will hope that the final result, that the ultimate result, would be more or less beneficial for the West. Better to say that the European Union wants to see a new Russian leader as a more predictable and more rational, not democratic one. I know. They don't believe in, frankly speaking, they don't believe, I mean, all these European bureaucrats, they don't believe in the prospect of democracy in Russia. But US position could become more aggressive, but Yeah, more aggressive one. Only the United States can influence, really, but not the European Union, frankly speaking.
Yeah, then do you think the EU will only observe and not try to disrupt?
Yeah, I am absolutely sure. I know it from my talks with some Western bureaucrats and my friends. I know that this is their principal position. At least it is the position of Germany and more or less a position of France. You know, this this tandem, key tandem in the European Union. But yeah.
A few days ago, you said in your YouTube TV channel that there is a huge linkage of information from FSB to Western intelligence agency. Do you have a fact that could prove it?
What kind of information do you mean?
You in your YouTube TV channel, you say that huge linkage of information from FSB to Western intelligence agency.
Frankly speaking, I did get the question.
Yeah, I say that.
Maybe you can to reinterpret it. Yeah.
Yeah. A few days ago, you said in your YouTube TV channel there is a huge leakage of information from FSB to Western.
Not from FSB, but from the Kremlin itself. It's more important because and this is a new situation. It is the first time for the last 20 years that such these leaks are of a very grand scale. This is the first time. It's more or less close as it was. We can use this as historic parallel in the Soviet Union during 1991, especially after August, because those people, I mean, not those who consist the key group, but those who are their assistants and so on, they think about future and they don't believe in the possibility of a successful transit. And so they want to provide some guarantees from the West.
Wow.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's something new for Russia.
Yeah, very new. After the political transition in Russia, we have different scenarios we saw. The first is if the Putin transition succeeded, and the second one is if the liberal opposition succeeded. Can you analyze the consequences of both of them in their relationships with the US and with the EU?
Yeah, I see. Look, in the first variant, I think the new Russian government will be interested in demonstrating some new behavior, and certainly it will avoid some, I mean, excesses of the Putin's regime, of the former leader, like it was, you see, during the transition of power from Stalin to Khrushchev. Разоблачение культа личности, cult of personality. And of course, I think that their behavior on the international scene would be more pragmatic one than during the Putin reign. But it depends who will become the successor, or better to say, who will execute a decisive influence on the successor. From which circles? From Siloviki or from more or less pragmatically oriented people? It depends. So we can observe very different variants in the first point. And the second, frankly speaking, I don't believe in the success of liberal opposition in general. I believe in the success of more or less broad civil coalition with a more or less pragmatic approach to the country and its relations with the West. Look, Russia is crucially interested in good relations with the West because of very different reasons. But these reasons, they are different, but they are very important. And starting from geopolitical and finishing, for example, high technology and all this stuff. So I hope I hope that the second variant will win, and in this sense will have more or less not very brilliant, but more or less pragmatic and enough successful cooperation between Russia and the West. But it does mean that democracy will win in Russia finally. I think even after this success, we will need about 10 or 15 years for foundation of the basics of democracy in Russia.
And do you think this dream of General de Gaulle, Russia from Atlantic to Ural, will come?
Look, I am sure that Russia and the European Union can become strategic, not even allies, but partners. I'm sure it is quite possible. Of course, Russia can't become a part of the European Union. Russia does need, and European Union does need, but to become very strong, not only neighbors or allies, but partners, yes, it's quite possible.
It's quite possible.
Yeah, I think it's quite possible, and it would be very, very important and a positive change for Russia. But this is a process. This is not like an act, you know. We will need, I think, not less than 10, 15 years, because, for example, the first point, Russia must leave Ukraine, at least Donbass. Frankly speaking, I don't think that Russia can't, in new Russia, in very pro-democratic, can't leave Crimea. But Donbass certainly it can leave, certainly. Then start new measures of confidence between Russia and the West, because we don't trust each other, you know, and there are very serious reasons for this mistrust, especially from the part of the West. So it takes, I think, not less than 10-15 years.
Yes, Brzezinski said that, wrote that in his book, you know, sooner or later, Russia will go to Europe.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt for me, and frankly speaking, no doubt for most Russians, because they don't self-identify themselves as Asians, as a part of Asia. Nevertheless, they think that they are Europeans, although, of course, we're different Europeans, but nevertheless, we are.
And my last question will be the role of China, because, you know, I was in Siberia and I saw like a lot of Chinese there. And my family roots come from Orenburg. And then I really like this between Ural and Siberia, and I saw a lot of Chinese.
Yeah, I know.
And what do you think? What will be the next step of China on its influence on Russia? Do you think that China can take Siberia? Do you think something like that, or?
I don't think in such perspective, but I must say that China is not a strategic partner, actually. This is a strategic challenge for Russia. It's a challenge, not a partner, not an ally. Well, and the best way for Russia to detain China is to have good relations with European Union in the West and with the United States and South Korea and Japan in the East. I mean, near China itself. So Russia needs two types of alliances for detaining China. And this is, I think, it would be maybe a key challenge for Russia in future. I mean, in the foreign policy, to detain China. Not only for Russia, I know.
Not only for Russia.
but for us especially. So I think that in the Russian Far East, we can propose the idea of a limited strategic partnership between Russia, United States, and limited strategic partner, South Korea, and maybe Vietnam too, to detain China. This is the only way for us to be safe, in the
and
region.
all those, you know, because we can see a lot of military cooperation between the Russian army and Chinese army. Do you think this is only theater, Potemkin?
No, this is not only a theater, but as far as I know, Putin doesn't trust to Chinese leadership. He must say that, oh, our best partners and all this shit, but actually he does trust Chinese, and Chinese does trust the Kremlin. We know it perfectly. And now Russia has a position of minor partner, and China is a grand partner. So it's a very unpleasant position you see for the Kremlin.
And to conclude this interview, can you present your you created a group, political group in Russia? Then can you present your group, the perspective of your group, the goals of the group?
Yeah, I see. I call this is a civic group. I call it перемен, changes. And we have a very simple, but I think very perspective idea to start a creation of this broad civil coalition, like civil coalitions which had place, during the demise and decline of the Soviet Empire and of the socialist system. You remember this, People's Fronts and National Fronts. And it was in the Soviet Union, in Russia. It was called Democratic Russia, Демократическая Россия. And we need such kind of coalition now. This is not a party. This is just a civil movement, nothing more. But I think that this is the only way to unite all the forces of different political and ideological orientations, and then those who have no any ideology.
Okay,
we are more or less successful now, more or less, I think, for Russia now.
Valery, that was really interesting, and thank you very much for this really very interesting interview. And let's continue to cooperate and work together with